Good evening. Thank you so much for coming. This event is co-organized by the United Nations Office of the Special Representative of the Secretary General on Sexual Violence in Conflict, the permanent missions of Germany and Iraq to the United Nations in close cooperation with the non-governmental organization Hawar. The documentary we will be watching today has been produced by Hawar and portrays the events following the Islamic State's attack on Iraq's Yazidi community in August 2014, leaving, according to present estimates, 5,000 dead, hundreds of thousands displaced, and 3,000 girls and women forced into sexual slavery. The panel discussion that will follow will serve to focus attention on critical considerations of medical and psychosocial support to survivors of sexual violence and access to justice. It will also be an opportunity to highlight Germany's special quota project for vulnerable women and children in northern Iraq, which provided comprehensive support to 1,100 Yazidi women and children in Germany. After the closing of the event, all of you will be invited to a reception to pursue our exchanges and discuss the path ahead. But first, let me give the floor for opening remarks to Ms. Pramila Patten, Special Representative of the Secretary General on Sexual Violence and Conflict, and to Mr. Christoph Heugsen, Permanent Representative of the Federal Republic of Germany to the United Nations. Thank you.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I would really like to thank Mrs. Düzen Tekkal and her organization, Hawar, for their determination to document and denounce the atrocities committed by Daesh against the Iraqi Yazidi community, and for helping to make this event possible. I would also like to extend my appreciation to the governments of Germany and Iraq for co-hosting this important event, and to our moderator, Mrs. Janine Di Giovanni, and to all of our esteemed panelists. Ladies and gentlemen, screening tonight's documentary, Hawar, A Cry for Help, provides us with an opportunity to show the world that the United Nations stand in solidarity with every victim of Daesh crimes and every survivor of sexual violence. Today, the defeat of Daesh in its most important strongholds, thanks to the battle waged by Iraq and members of the anti-ISIL coalition, has brought a rare moment of hope to a troubled region. Yet, for too many survivors of sexual violence, war is not over when it's over. The consequences of these crimes are profound and enduring. They live on in untreated trauma, nightmares, social stigma, and children born of rape. The manifestations of stigma, which follow in the wake of rape, are multiple, intersecting, and often lethal. Shame and victim blame can lead to depression, suicide, untreated infections, unsafe abortion, maternal mortality, forced marriage, and so-called honor crimes. It can also lead to public hostility, humiliation, rejection, and even re-victimization. The stigma can be compounded by having children born of rape. As a result, such children are often abandoned and left in a legal limbo. Without their father's name or presence, they may be denied birth certificates and identity papers, which can cause them to become stateless. This can deprive them of education, healthcare, and other essential services. Socioeconomic reintegration will be critical to avoid a lost generation. All political, religious, and traditional leaders must use their influence to redirect the stigma and send a clear signal that the only shame of rape is in committing, commanding, or condoning it. There can be no durable peace or reconciliation so long as the divisive and debilitating force of stigma persists. The sexual violence perpetrated by Daesh has been systematic, institutionalized, and integral to its ideology and operations. Daesh has used sexual violence as a tactic of war and terror to advance its core strategic objectives, such as recruiting fighters through the promise of wives and sex slaves, and raising funds through the sale of women and girls, including in open slave bazaar according to fixed price list, like livestock at a farmer's market. They have also issued so-called fatwas codifying sexual slavery and attempting to justify it through holy scriptures. The message that resounds most loudly and clearly from my interactions with women and girls who have escaped Daesh captivity, including members of the Yazidi community, is that the perpetrators must be held accountable. The recently adopted Security Council resolution to establish an investigative team is promising. Investigation is critical to ensure that evidence is duly collected and not lost to the passage of time. However, this is not enough, nor is it enough to defeat Daesh on the battlefield alone. We must also win the battle of ideas, which includes building civic trust and confidence in the rule of law. In this regard, the visible and consistent prosecution of sexual violence as a self-standing crime is vital for precedent setting, deterrence, and ultimately prevention. Justice and support to the survivors must infuse all our reconstruction efforts in Iraq in the wake of Daesh. Reconstruction does not only mean rebuilding infrastructure, but fundamentally rebuilding trust within and between communities. To this end, my office, on behalf of the entire United Nations system, has signed a joint communiqué with the government of Iraq to comprehensively address conflict-related sexual violence. The strength and resilience of the survivors, some of whom are depicted in the documentary you will see tonight, should serve as an inspiration and a clarion call to action. This is our sacred duty of care to survivors, including women like Najla, who will join us on the panel. She's a remarkable and courageous woman who I had the privilege of meeting earlier this year. Her tenacity inspires me to sustain the fight for justice with equal determination. Tonight's event also allows us to highlight Germany's special quota project for women and children affected by Daesh atrocities. This project provides a lifeline for Yazidis fleeing violence committed by Daesh, including sexual violence, by allowing over 1,000 women and children to relocate to the state of Baden-Württemberg in Germany. This is a pioneering program, and I believe that history will remember the generosity and humanity the people of Baden-Württemberg have shown in protecting and assisting a persecuted community. I'm also pleased that Germany is continuing to support reconstruction in Iraq to ensure that all survivors of Daesh can live in dignity and peace. Following this example, let us spare no effort to help heal the physical, psychological, and social scars inflicted by Daesh and to replace horror with hope. Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight for this important event, which brings again here at the UN the attention to the fate of the Yazidis, to the Daesh crimes against the Yazidis, but also to the underlying topic: how can we help victims of sexual violence in conflict, and how can we ensure accountability for these heinous crimes? I would like to thank the Special Representative of the Secretary General on Sexual Violence in Conflict, Ms. Pramila Patten, for her tireless commitment to the cause, for the close cooperation in the run-up to this event, but also for the very close cooperation that you have demonstrated over time with the German government. I would also like to thank Düzen Tekkal for her dedication to documenting the plight of the Yazidi community, and I had the pleasure of meeting Düzen Tekkal this morning and to witness her commitment and the commitment of her whole family, a family of 11 brothers and sisters who are fighting for the survival of the Yazidis and the Yazidi culture, religion in Germany, but also abroad. And her and Düzen Tekkal, who was instrumental for the film that we are going to see, does a fantastic work. I would also like to thank the other panelists who will be witnessing in a moment. Thanks for all of them to making the way to New York, and in particular, thank goes to Najla for speaking to us today. The Special Representative has already touched on the most important message of this event. Victims must be at the center of our efforts to address atrocity crimes. Germany, and this has already been mentioned a couple of times, is indeed hosting right now over 1,100 Yazidis as part of a special quota project. And we have with us tonight Dr. Blume, who was a driving force behind the project. Dr. Blume will give more details during the panel discussion. In Germany, Chancellor Merkel personally takes a very keen interest in the fate and the plight of the Yazidis. She has met with the UN Goodwill Ambassador for the Dignity of Survivors of Human Trafficking, Nadia Murad, also a wonderful woman. When you listen to her and to what has happened to her in her young life, it's incredible. And when you see how she is ready to talk about this and to gather support for the cause, this is really incredible. And I'm full of admiration for people like Nadia Murad who speak out and gather support for the cause. At the meeting that the Chancellor attended in Berlin last year, the Chancellor stressed that one of the most important elements in helping survivors is ending the perverse stigmatization they face. And Patton has already mentioned that. We need to break the silence on these heinous crimes, and this evening's event will undoubtedly contribute to this end. Despite the fact that we are very active in Germany hosting Yazidis, we believe that the main focus of our work and of our efforts should remain in Iraq, where we are funding projects to help survivors. This includes a joint program with the Iraqi government to train health professionals to deal with the specific traumata endured by survivors. And we are working very closely with the Iraqi government in this regard, and I'm very happy that we are somehow co-hosting the event tonight, my Iraqi colleague and myself. Finally, we all agree on the need for accountability for all grave violations of human rights, regardless of who was targeted and who were the perpetrators. ISIS terrorists have committed horrible crimes against the Yazidis, but also against other ethnic and religious minorities. Together with the UN and the Iraqi government, we are committed to bringing Daesh criminals to justice to prevent a culture of impunity. Doing so will also promote reconciliation within Iraqi society, which is key for lasting peace and stability. The resolution adopted by the Security Council this fall on accountability for crimes committed by Daesh was a first important step. Germany supports the collection and preservation of evidence on mass atrocities to lay the basis for accountability. For instance, by the Commission for International Justice and Accountability, CIJA, in northern Iraq. Without these steps, peace will not come, nor will it prevail. Germany will continue to be a committed partner in the fight against impunity and in standing up for the victims of atrocities. Thank you very much.
Hello. I'd like to thank Düzen for an extraordinary film, a brave film, a compassionate film, and an extremely courageous documentary. Thank you so much. And I'd like to introduce the other panelists. Düzen, Dr. Michael Blume, who is an expert in religious studies and evolution science and the head of the Special Quota Project for Vulnerable Women and Children in northern Iraq. Najla Mato is a Yazidi woman from Kocho village in Iraq. Najla was captured by ISIS, held captive for 12 months, and repeatedly sold on slave markets. She now lives in Germany. Dr. Nagam Nazat Hassan is a Yazidi physician and human rights activist who is dedicating her efforts to rescuing and helping survivors freed from ISIS captivity. Scott Gilmore is an international human rights lawyer with the Center for Justice and Accountability and representing victims of mass atrocities in civil and criminal matters, both in the US and abroad. I'm going to start with Düzen, talking about this documentary, how difficult it was to make. You're a Yazidi woman, these are your people. How did you manage, if you did, to work as a journalist objectively, but at the same time to bring such a sensitive film? And also, what was the role of Yazidi women organizations, journalists, human rights defenders? How did they help you?
Yeah, first of all, I would like... First of all, I would like to thank the United Nations, especially the Special Representative, Ms. Pamela Patton, and her strong team. Ms. Patton made her first transatlantic trip in her position to participate in our Women's Conference at the German Parliament with the Chancellor Merkel. She chose the Yazidi cause. She chose our small organization, an organization run by Yazidi women for Yazidi women. I cannot be grateful enough to strong women such as our Chancellor Angela Merkel and Pamela Patton for fighting for us to be heard. Further, I would like to thank the German Permanent Mission to the UN and the Iraqi Permanent Mission for co-hosting this event. We had a wonderful and productive meeting today in the morning with Ambassador Heusgen and yesterday with the Iraqi ambassador. And now I will come to your questions. So if you ask me how difficult it was, I have to answer, I always wanted to tell the story about my people and my religion because it was a story of pain. And what we saw, what ISIS did to our people, is not something which was new for us. It was new for the world. But it is the 72nd genocide against my people. And therefore, I always wanted to tell the story about the Yazidi cause, but no one was interested in it. But when ISIS came 2014 to Sinjar and to Kocho and began this ongoing genocide, the people were interested in what is happening to our people. And therefore, I went to the Iraq to be there for my people. And of course, was the fact that I'm a Yazidi woman something which gave me the bravery. So I wish I could sit here and say to you, I had the brave in Rwanda or Bosnia, but I didn't went there because I was not involved in it. And maybe this is something what I learned from myself from this ongoing genocide at the Yazidi people, that we have to stay up for everyone who is in need and who needs our help. And therefore, it was not so difficult as the people are expecting. I think the life which, for example, Nejla went through is more difficult than that what I saw. On the one hand, it was hard because I was very near at the coast. But on the other hand, I tried to be a good journalist, but it was not possible. I went there as a journalist, but I turned to a war reporter and came back as a human rights activist because we are just 1 million in the world. And therefore, this is something what we have in common with all Yazidi people. We knew that we are needed right now for our people in Iraq.
Dr. Nagam, could you talk to me a bit about the situation for children, born as a result of rape. What can be done to support their mothers and avoid the stigmatization of these children?
أريد أن أقدم شكري الجزيل أريد أن أقدم شكري الجزيل إلى الأمم المتحدة لدعوتها لنا للتكلم أو التحدث عن الكارثة اليزيدية. كما أقدم شكري الخاص إلى السيد عبد الرزاق الساعدي لمساعدته ومساندته لي في لدعم القضية اليزيدية من منظمة PHR، وشكر وتقدير السيدة سوزانا أيضا من منظمة PHR لدعمهم المستمر إلي. طبعا موضوع اللي حدث لليزيدية في 3/8/2014 كان موضوع كثير كبير، وكان في تبعيات كثيرة منها موضوع الأطفال. احنا كديانة يزيدية ومثل باقي الديانات عندها عادات وتقاليد مسموحة وعادات يعني أشياء مرفوضة. بالنسبة للديانة اليزيدية العادات الموجودة أنه الشخص اللي يخرج من الديانة اليزيدية ما مسموح له أنه يرجع مرة ثانية يرجع يزيدي. لكن بعد كارثة شنغال في 3/8/2014 سماحة بابا الشيخ أصدر قرار مع المجلس الروحاني أن يتم قبول هؤلاء الأشخاص إذا أرادوا أن يرجعوا إلى الديانة اليزيدية، وهذا القرار كان مهم جداً وساعد الكثير من النساء والفتيات والأطفال أن يرجعوا إلى الديانة اليزيدية. الديانة اليزيدية مثل باقي الديانات لها خصوصية، عندها عادات تقاليد. موضوع الأطفال موضوع حساس جدا. لحد الآن لاحظنا عدد قليل من النساء اللي جابوا وياهم أطفال، أغلبهم الموجودين ما رادوا يحتفظون بالأطفال لأنهم أطفال داعش، هم ما يتقبلوهم نفسيا. لكن الموضوع الآخر ده يصير مداولة به كيف أنه راح نحل هذا الموضوع في حالة إذا امرأة أرادت يعني تأخذ طفلها، لأن هذا الموضوع موضوع حساس وموضوع ديني وموضوع عائلي، فأي قرار راح يتم به راح يكون يعني لازم أنه الجميع يحترمه. شكرا.
What were some of the services that you provide in your own work to victims of sexual violence, and what are the gaps? What do we need to do? What do we need more? What needs more work?
Yes. أنا كنت أعمل كطبيبة نسائية حالي حال أي طبيبات. كنت أعمل في المستشفيات. بعد 3 وكنت ناشطة أيضا في حقوق المرأة، أقوم بدوعية النساء بأمور صحية. لكن بعد 3/8 من سمعت أنه عدد كبير من أهل سنجار نسحوا إلى إقليم كردستان، قررت أن أساعدهم. فاستمرت بالمساعدة مساعدة هؤلاء لمدة شهر كامل. لكن النقطة المهمة في حياتي كانت عندما سمعت أنه هناك ناجيات تخلصوا من أيادي داعش، فقررت أن أكون سند إلهم وأكون صوت إلهم وأساعدهم من جميع النواحي وخاصة من الناحية الطبية. فزرتهم كانوا عايشين إقليم كردستان. لاحظت أن وضعهم الصحي كان تعبان كلش، وضع النفسي. فكانت بالبداية الأمور كثير صعبة، لأن النساء والفتيات كانوا يخافوا من المقابل، وكان من الصعوبة أن يعني أن نشوف طريقة أن يقبلوا أن يتعالجون. كنت أحاول أزورهم أغلب الأيام حتى أقنعهم للعلاج. فنجحنا بهاي المهمة. شغلي أنه أي ناجية تأتي من أو تتحرر من إيد داعش، أقوم طبعا بعد موافقتها بفتح فايل إلها وأخذ معلومات عامة عنها، وبعد ذلك أقوم بإجراء الفحوصات اللازمة إلها والفحوصات السريرية طبعا بعد موافقتها، وإجراء بعض اللقاحات إلها ومتابعتها بين فترة وفترة. بالإضافة إلى هذا أقوم بزيارات ميدانية دائما للمخيمات خاصة الحالات اللي أشوف وضعها النفسي تعبان من أول زيارة أو ترفض تتكلم بعض الأمور، أعطيها مجال بين فترة وفترة أزورها إلى حتى أشوف أنه أكو أشخاص تسندها. بالإضافة إلى هذا عملت في البرنامج الألماني الذي أعدته الحكومة الألمانية مشكورة بنقل 1000 من الضحايا إلى ألمانيا لغرض العلاج النفسي، حيث كنت طبيبة البرنامج وقمنا بنقل الضحايا. وكان طبعا دور الدكتور ميشائيل بلومة دور كلش كبير بصراحة بمساعدة الناجيات، وسهل علينا كثير من الأمورات وسهل سفر الناجيات وكان متعاطف كثير مع القضية. أنا أود طبعا أشكره شكر خاص. زرت الناجيات عدد منهم في ألمانيا لكي أطلع على أوضاعهم العامة هناك، وكذلك حتى إذا عندهم مشاكل ننقلها إلى الحكومة الألمانية، وكان تعاون من قبل الحكومة الألمانية. كذلك كرست وقتي أنه هناك دور للأيتام، 3 دور للأيتام اللي داعش قتلوا أهاليهم، فأزور كل أسبوع. عندي يوم خصصته أنه أزور هؤلاء الأطفال الأيتام، أي دعم مثلا طبي يحتاجوه أو إذا أقدر أسوي، إذا لا أستطيع طبعا أحولها إلى الجهات المختصة. بالإضافة إلى هذا شاركت مع UNHCR بترشيح الأسماء للسفر إلى كندا، وكان عندنا متابعة مع UNHCR للحالات الطارئة والحالات الملحة. قمت طبعا بتوثيق مئات الحالات من الضحايا، وطبعا كان عندي دور أيضا، قمنا بنقل عدد من الأطفال إلى المستشفيات الإيطالية، أطفال النازحين اللي يعانون من أمراض مستعصية لغرض العلاج خارج العراق. هاي بالنسبة للخدمات اللي قدمتها خلال 3 سنوات ونص. تقريبا كرست حياتي فقط لمساعدة هؤلاء يعني ضحايا داعش. بالنسبة للتحديات اللي نواجهها، بصراحة تحديات يعني كثير كبيرة، منها أنه البرامج اللي تأتي لمساعدة الناجيات تقريبا يعني قليلة، ما تتناسب مع حجم الكارثة، أو تكون برامج قصيرة الأمد خلال فترة معينة وتنتهي. أتمنى أنه يكون تمديد لبرامج الهجرة. أنا لاحظت خلال عملي مع الناجيات المستمر، لاحظت أنه البرامج الوحيدة اللي دا تنجح هو نقل الناجيات خارج العراق، لأن مهما كانت برامج ودعم منظمات، دائما هذا دعم يكون مؤقت، ما أكو دعم طويل الأمد. فنقلهم خارج العراق فرق شاسع. لاحظت البنات اللي بألمانيا، زرتهم عدة مرات، شفت أنه وضعهم فرق شاسع عن العراق، لأن حتى إذا كان أكو برامج داخل العراق، بعد ما يزورون مناطقهم راح يتأثرون مرة ثانية بالوضع، يعني يعيشون نفس المأساة، تذكر المآسي، تذكر بيتها، أهلها، الناس المفقودين. الشيء المهم الآخر اللي طبعا دائما صار لي تقريبا 2 سنين أحث عليه وما شفنا أي اهتمام بهذا الموضوع. عندنا أطفال من 5 سنوات إلى 15 سنة كانوا يتدربون بمعسكرات التدريب، يتدربون على أبشع أنواع القتل والعنف. لحد هسه ما أكو أي جهة تكفلت معالجة هؤلاء الأطفال أو تأهيل الأطفال، لأن هذول يكونون خطر على المجتمع ويكونون قنبلة موقوتة. وتحدثت مع عدة جهات ومع عدة منظمات أن يفتحوا مراكز خاصة لهؤلاء الأطفال، لحد هسه ما شفنا أي استجابة. مطالبنا الأخرى طبعا نتأمل من الأمم المتحدة أن تتعاون معنا بكثير من الأمور، منها أنه إحنا بعد ما تحررت مناطقنا، صح تحررت مناطقنا، لكن عندنا مشاكل يعني كبيرة، منها أنه إحنا ماكو ضمان أنه ترجع الأمور مرة ثانية أو يتكرر مسلسل داعش مرة ثانية. إذا ماكو حماية دولية ما راح نقدر نهائياً نأمن رجوع الناس إلى مناطقها. صح إحنا نشجع العودة إنه الناس ترجع إلى بيوتها، لكن بدون جارانتي، وهذا الشيء خطر. نتمنى أن الأمم المتحدة تفتح مكاتب في مناطق سهل نينوى ومنطقة سنجار، حتى إذا كان انتهاكات بحقوق أي شخص تسجل هذه الانتهاكات ويحاسب كل شخص. لحد هسه، والشيء المهم كيف أنه راح نرجع ثقة الناجيات أو الناس بالمجتمع الدولي أو المجتمع المحلي. لحد هسه أي نوع من العدالة ما طبقت بالعراق، لا شفنا أي شخص قام بعمليات الإجرام من داعش انحال إلى محاكم أو انفتحت محاكم بخصوص هذا الموضوع. موضوع العدالة موضوع كلش مهم حتى نرجع ثقة الناس بالمجتمع الدولي والمجتمع المحلي. لحد هسه ماكو تحقيق عدالة، لا من ناحية إحالة جرائم داعش إلى المحاكم ولا من ناحية التعويضات لأهالي المخطوفين، للشهداء، للناجيات. أي دور ما كان بصراحة للحكومة لمساعدة الناجيات. ناجيات 3 سنين، ناجية تأتي من سجون داعش وشافت الأمرين والعنف والاغتصاب وكل أنواع الجرائم، تأتي تعيش بمخيم بإقليم كردستان لا يتجاوز حجمه متر في متر. مع العلم هي فاقدة أغلب أفراد عائلتها، وضعها الاقتصادي سيء، فما شفنا أي بصراحة يعني عطف من قبل الحكومة والمجتمع الدولي. أيضا الشيء اللي قدمه ما كان يعني بحجم الكارثة. فياريت طبعا يكون دعم أكثر من قبل المجتمع الدولي للكارثة اللي حدثت للمجتمع اليزيدي، لأن الكارثة اللي حدثت ما كانت كارثة سهلة. هي طبعا داعش استهدف كل الفئات بالمجتمع العراقي والسوري وكل المناطق، لكن كانت الحصة الكبرى للمجتمع اليزيدي. داعش حطم البنية التحتية للمجتمع اليزيدي.
Thank you, Dr. Nagam. We're going to come back to the issue of justice and accountability, but first let's talk to Dr. Blume about the motivation behind the special quota project. And also earlier, you're a religious expert, and we were talking about how His Holiness Baba Sheikh basically brought these women back into the community. They weren't stigmatized, they weren't left by themselves. They were told that they could come back to the community, that there was nothing to be ashamed of. In my work, this is the first time I've seen this happen. It certainly didn't happen in Bosnia or in Rwanda or other places, Kosovo, where mass rape took place. So could you talk a bit about that and how important it was to the cohesion of the Yazidi community? And then tell us a bit about your motivation for the special quota project.
Yeah, thank you. In Germany, we are having a Yazidi minority, like, for example, the family Tekkal that came a decade ago from Turkey, and so when this attack happened, a delegation of the Central Council of Yazidis in Germany approached our regional prime minister, Kretschmann, and they showed him pictures that were sent by Daesh as a matter of terror. So we knew what was going on. We saw these pictures are so horrible. I didn't show them to my team, only to those who wanted to see them. But it was all open and clear. And the our prime minister asked, "What can we do? We don't have an army as a state within the federal state, and we don't need one. We are happy about that." And so we found in the law the possibility to do a humanitarian program to admit people to come. And the federal government agreed that we could do that if we would be ready to go there by ourselves and to do all the decisions and to fulfill this program. The day before Christmas, the Prime Minister asked me if I would be ready to do that, and of course I agreed, and I assembled a team and we went there. And of course we approached the Baba Sheikh, the Yazidi High Council, and at first they were quite reluctant because they were used to hundreds of years of staying away, and now we asked them to entrust to us women and children from their community. On the other side, they knew that they didn't have the means to help. The Baba Sheikh then asked what he could do to support it. And I said, I have just one wish, please bless the women and children that we are about to take to Germany so that they know that they can return. And he agreed to do that, and you saw it in the film, because what happened, and we just did it because we wanted to help the people psychologically, but all the people in the meantime are having smartphones. And so it went viral, and suddenly the perception of the women and children changed, and it changed the outlook on the women within the community. It changed the religion. Others like Nadia Murad or Najla, Lamia, Farida began to speak out as soon as they were in Germany. And that was something we were surprised, but then we said, okay, if that's their choice, we empower them, because now they are free and they are secure. I can say when we're returning to Lalish, we see even pictures of Nadia and other of these strong women, because now they're seen as ambassadors to this religious community. And I'm grateful that today the embassies of Germany and Iraq are doing such a thing together. It shows that something has changed.
What do you think motivated him to break tradition, thousands of years of tradition, and to have that extraordinary
in fact,
moment?
I think he and Pope Francis, they would get along very well. Yeah. He told me that he would like to reform more, but they don't let him. I think, just let me tell you a story. One family did not accept one of the girls that had been raped, and he brought the girl to the family, and he said, if you don't take her back, I will take her to my family, and this will bring shame to your family. But on the other side, he understood that for many of them, they wouldn't have a chance to stay in Iraq. You have to imagine, you have situations where an uncle takes 10 refugees to his house, and then there is this one woman always crying, always being traumatized. And so this uncle, and this is a person I'm thinking of, he said, take her or I will have to throw her out. And just to take it to a point, we had a lot of suicides in Iraq among the women and children. And the minute we brought them out, it stopped. From the 1,100 we managed to bring to Germany, after 2 years, we don't have a single case of suicide. So if people are saying we can't do anything, that's not true. We can help, and Germany did, a state in Germany did, and so I do hope that other states might join the effort.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Najla, we saw your story, which was incredibly moving. What impact did the Special Quota Project have on your life and on the lives of other survivors? What has it given you?
إيرو قالك يا ممنون مشوا الأمم المتحدة أزل برحاضر بوم دعواش مرتشي بو أسكار بم دردي كمديتي أز شوارا بيجم.
Nejla asked me to translate because we speak the same Kurdish dialect. I thank the United Nations for the opportunity to speak here today to you and to tell you my story.
يعني وقت نافا ألمانيا ده يعني وقت اشترشوا
أسكالك أممنون إش مشاين دكتور بلومي كمساعدة مناجياتا كر 1010 إش ناجياتا آنينا ألمانيا وقت أزل نيفا دست داعش ده مبهور نكربو أسروشا كي بيم وي أسكاربم سري خواراكم أسكاربم دركف مش مالا خوا يك مساعدة منو تشتكي بك هكا أسهات ما كردستاني بينش هايفا أسمام وادعي مقالك إني باشبو لأن أمل المخيمة دبون ومساعدات شمرنتات نكرن مساعدات بمنظمات شمرتات نكرن نقالك تقويبون بشتي أف برنامج تشيبوي وأم آنينا ألمانيا شمرة قالك يا مهمبو وأم هتا دنیایش بیراناکن و وقتی ام بی خودان من ما او دیت نش خورا خودان که ام وساس تقبلاندن.
Thank you to Mr. Michael Blume and the Special Quota Project, because for me that was a life-changing moment. I knew very well when I was in the hands of ISIS, they said every day to me, you don't belong to the Yazidi religion anymore. They will take you back. And I believed them over 8 months when I was in their hands. And then over social media, I saw the pictures from Nadia, for example, and I saw she became a voice, she became a hero. And I, for myself, understand at that moment that my Yazidi religion will take me back. And this was something for me which was very important because it gives me the power to survive. And when I was in Iraq, I felt very weak and stigmatized, and I felt shame. But when I came to Germany over the Special Quota Project, I became more and more power. And for me, the second life-changing moment was, for example, to meet people like Ms. Patton, Ms. Merkel. And then when we went back to Iraq again, I came back as someone who has a voice, as someone who is behaving like a hero. And that was something which gives me a lot of power. And I try to raise my voice for the dead people, including my parents which you saw in the documentary. And therefore, this was for me a life-changing moment, the Special Quota Project.
Thank you.
Maybe one question. One question.
Yes, but how do you, it's, for those of us who saw the film, I mean, the big question really is how do you go forward with your life? Having gone through such a horrific experience, how have you recovered, and how do you try to talk to other victims and to give them hope about moving forward past such a terrible trauma, not just to yourself, but to your society, to the Yazidi culture?
هو قدش بتجاوب خدي وشو قدش تلهاتن تقاوته خوش كل اللي دكشيني تو يعني وكي يروي دون شتي وجمرد بيجي
او تشتي هكا مديتي تشتك نما هكا من نادي تبجاوت خوا طبعا وكا او كاتشكا كانو هاقوتي هاتا دنياي تشتكنا الشرفات مهمترة هكا الشرفة متشا افتشتكي قالكي ما زنبو مبهور نكرس كاربم سري خوش برخورا بكم بس وقتي مديتي ازديا امستقبل عندن وقتي ازدركتي يكي وكا امشاين بلوني مساعدة ماكريش المانيا را ازدركتي مع المانيا واسئيرو ببينم يكا وكا الدوزن ودعواش مرش امم المتحدة باسكاربم دنجي خوابلندكم طبعا قواتش مرات شيبو ووقتی محاوچند عذاب دی بابی مچه برای مچه داکا مچه خودانت بابی مهموچن از نکارم ریس بکم چندن از نکارم بیشم چند ازدی چوینا همو بابو برایت من او دحیا همو بابو برایت مبون ات چوین کچکوشن همو داکو خوشگید مبون طبعا از ایرو ببینم از الوردنگ خوراکم شمرا گلک بقواتا از خوانائخم لازم أسرابن بيجم.
What gives me the power is to sit here today and to talk to you. This is my kind of medicine. I don't need any other thing for me because I don't have a headache or things like that. We are talking about an ongoing genocide. And I need your support to raise my voice. And as you saw, I lost 43 family members, including my father, my mother, but all of them were like my family. And there was nothing which I don't see or didn't get when I was in the hands of ISIS. They sold me, they behaved me like a slave, they sold me, and for me, it was like no living. I had the feeling like being in hell. And I didn't see that I will survive. I said to myself, okay, that's it. But I survived. And the fact that I survived gives me the responsibility to my people and especially to the women who are still in the hands of ISIS to raise my voice for the dead people. This is the reason why I'm here today, and this is the reason why I have the power to follow on.
So you're bearing witness. Düzen, what an incredible voyage you've had, from a journalist in Germany to a war reporter to an activist to launching Hawar. What's the new project, Back to Life? Can you tell us about that?
The new project is that what you saw the last 5 minutes. This will be the new documentary. It calls Cihan. Cihan is the Kurdish word for life, and the second name is a cry for life. And what we wanted to describe with that was that there is a light after the darkness, and the light are women like Nejla. And Nejla is not just one example. All of that women which we have in Germany right now, for example, Nadia Murad, we have a lot of Nadia Murads, but we need to empower them. We have to give them a voice. We have to give them a belief, a face back again. And this is what we try to do, for example, with our NGO. And I feel, of course, a special responsibility because me and my sisters are so lucky that we was born and raised up in a country which we are, in which we are secure and safe, but not my Yazidi sister from Iraq, for example. And that was the reason why I went there, to make it hearable. And my job as a documentary filmmaker is to take the camera in the hand and to show what is happening in the world, to make, maybe to give the voiceless a voice, and to make this kind of power women hearable. And I think they have a lot of power. This is what we saw very impressing also in the documentary, but also when Nejla is sitting here and telling us her story. And to be honest, I have not the feeling that I'm helping her. I often have the feeling that she's helping me, because she made it possible that our own problems became very, very small. And this is something which is really amazing. And she's saying to me, I'm not a victim. I'm a survivor, and I have the power. And for example, the reason why we went back to Iraq was not my idea, it was her idea. And she was very strong on that I hadn't got another chance to go back with her. And she said, for me, it was like a catharsis. I wanted to go to the school in Kocho, where that happened, where my people have been killed, to show that I'm stronger than ISIS. This is something which what she is saying in the camera, and she said to me, I have to say that in German. This is very important for me. And I said, okay, do it, however you want. And she came back very powerful. And she said, I have to be there 3 years later, at the same time, at 11 on the August the 15th, when Daesh came to Kocho. And what she's saying, for example, on the other hand, is that she said, just imagine there are people who wanted to kill you, like in the Second World War, but you're living in the 21st century, and there's internet, there's social media. So what do you try to make? You try to survive, and you are cry for help, and this is what they wanted to make, and what they did, but no one was interested in them. And this was the point for me, maybe, when I recognized you have to go there, because what the people don't not see doesn't happen. So maybe this was the reason for this work, what I'm doing.
I want to ask you about resilience and the resilience of the community, but first I want to turn a little bit to the issue of justice, because we're running out of time. The Security Council Resolution 2379 was adopted in September 2017, establishing an investigation team for ISIS war crimes. But Scott, I know, having been a reporter in war zones for many years, that it takes a long time for justice to actually reach, to actually get to court. I mean, look at General Mladic, after 22 years, was finally, justice was served, if it was. So how is the implementation of this resolution, how does it affect your work? And could you tell us a little bit about how the investigative team will work with victims and legal representatives?
Yeah, I think the important thing to bear in mind is that the creation of this investigative team is one piece of a larger effort, and there are a number of actors involved. one of the remarkable things about the international response to the crimes committed by Daesh against the Yazidis and elsewhere is that much of the work to begin collecting evidence happened contemporaneously with the commission of these crimes. This is really a new feature for international justice. So what that means is that for years now, there have been within Iraq, Iraqi national authorities, investigative judges, law enforcement, military security forces that have been beginning to gather evidence and appreciate the scope of the crimes. There have been NGOs and civil society organizations. The Commission for International Justice and Accountability was mentioned earlier, with the support of governments that have been operating on the ground. So those efforts are already beginning. I think that the investigative team is an important second phase of that, which is going to be bringing together, coalescing the various elements of that. When we talk about justice, we really are talking about two phases. Justice in response to mass atrocity. The first phase is investigation, fact-finding, gathering evidence. Gathering evidence of a genocide is very different than investigating an everyday sort of garden variety crime. You're talking about a crime involving a massive number of victims and a massive number of perpetrators. One element of investigating is collecting the statements of eyewitnesses, victims. Another element is having access and analyzing physical species of evidence, doing forensic excavations of mass graves. This has only recently begun to even be possible as Sinjar was retaken and as access to areas like Kocho has become available. Some of the scenes that you saw in the documentary, revisiting the school in Kocho, where so many women and families were separated and was really one of the first of the many transit points in which women went from being reduced to slavery and then disseminated and spread throughout Iraq and into Syria. The first time that investigators have access to those spaces mean that for once there's the ability to start determining grave sites, identifying the remains that are found in those grave sites. Another really crucial area of investigation is not focused on gathering information from the victim's perspective, it's focused on gathering information from the perpetrator's side. One element of that is that the Islamic State is a terrorist organization with a pretense of being a functioning state. It generates an incredible amount of paper, like any functioning bureaucracy. One of the key goals for this investigative team will have to be getting access to some of the internal records of the Islamic State. It's through records like that that investigators are able to piece together the chain of command. And that's one of the main issues I really want to emphasize here when we talk about justice. We're talking about crimes committed as a result of systematic planning and policy making.
From higher up.
From the higher up, from the highest levels. The treatment of thousands of women who were sexually enslaved was a treatment that was analyzed and authorized by legal and religious scholars. The minutiae of the treatment and handling of enslaved women is dictated in legal documents published and circulated by the Islamic State. So it's very clear that all of this was designed. This was a systematic crime with the aim of destroying the Yazidi population. And you don't get that type of patterns of violations, separating men and women, separating younger women from older women, younger boys of a certain age being sent as child soldiers, boys of another age being divided into another group and very often being executed. All of that is evidence of an incredible amount of control exercised by superiors over subordinates. So when we try to envision what justice looks like, justice has to look like mapping out, reconstructing the command structure, identifying which ISIS leaders from the senior to mid-level have survived the battlefield and can be brought to justice, and then proving their responsibility, proving that they were not just responsible for their own personal sex slaves, which of course they maintained, but proving that they themselves were responsible for authorizing the systematic policy of extermination.
How do you I mean, part of what I always find talking to victims of atrocities or genocide or ethnic cleansing, they don't feel that justice actually gets to them because they feel that the big guys are brought into The Hague or Arusha or wherever, but the people who actually did it, the people that raped and murdered and burned the houses and destroyed, are never actually brought to justice. How can you overcome that? I mean, is there some kind of protection for victims in that way?
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the great challenges of international justice. How can you prosecute tens of thousands of perpetrators? In some ways, it's not possible or feasible. The goal has to be, A, to prosecute those most responsible, B, to prosecute an exemplary number. In other words, showing that simply following orders is not an excuse, it's not going to qualify you for amnesty. But I think one of the keys for ensuring that, whether it's the Iraqi government or the international community, that these justice systems harness the healing power of justice is by ensuring that the victims have a voice, that the victims have the ability to participate, not just as witnesses. I mean, participating as witnesses is incredibly important. But what we really have seen over the past several decades of developments in pushing for justice, both internationally through the ICC, but even nationally, if you look at some of the examples in Sierra Leone, Cambodia, Guatemala, what you see is that it's really through the effort, the will of victims, survivors, their families, and their communities that are pushing for justice. That is really the driving force behind this. And I think that the key is going to be within Iraq and other justice systems engaging with the Daesh crimes. It's going to be a way of harnessing input from the victims, understanding what victims' priorities are. Reparation is a key priority. The ability to testify, the ability to stand up in court and tell the truth, which is incredibly, I mean, that is the power of a victim. They have the truth, they can expose it, and they can set a historical record, which incidentally is also very important internationally for reconciliation and confronting the ideology of ISIS. Because having the truth be established in court, creating a historical record, makes it such that ISIS and its potential supporters can't point to this and say, this is all lies, this is all smears. We didn't commit rape. What we committed was religiously sanctioned.
Does it also, I mean, the pursuit of justice sends a message then to other war criminals around the world who feel that they could get away with it? The Joseph Konis, the Bashar al-Assads, the Kabiyas, that this says to them, we will find you, we will hunt you down, you will go to court, you will face justice. I mean, this is very important, isn't it? The sending of a hard message.
It's absolutely right, and this is true even in a domestic criminal prosecution, but it's even more important when you're talking about prosecuting mass atrocities, because those who carry out mass atrocities do so through power.
Yes.
They have power, they exercise violence through power, and they maintain power through a sense of impunity. There really is condemning it, intervening on behalf of the victims, providing psychosocial support, all of that is absolutely essential. But if we want to talk about ending the cycle of violence and ending the repetition and making it so that no group would have the ability and the sense of impunity to carry out these types of crimes brazenly and advertise them. I mean, ISIS did not hide what it was doing. They carried these out publicly and proclaimed them with pride. So to condemn that is essential.
Thank you. I wish we could spend all evening talking about this, but we've got to wrap up. So I just want to ask Dr. Blume, what are some of the important lessons you've learned from the Special Quota Project? What can you share with us about lessons learned, especially about survivors of sexual violence?
I would say that we learned that the survivors are far stronger than one would think. And if I would have just one dream, that would be that we would have a coalition of democracies accepting victims of sexual violence, because in that case, the perpetrators would know that they will be accused. People will raise their voices. The women will speak out. There will be international courts. So I would beg the international community not only to take this special quota project and say, okay, it was fine, thank you, but to take it as an opportunity, give the women their voices. Then we can stop sexual violence and conflicts in the future.
Thank you. Najla, what are some priorities for the Yazidi community in Iraq and abroad? What do you see as, how can we move forward?
حالي إزدياء العراق إنها حاليا نيباشا إشبرتشي حتى كتشكو زارو كش إزديال دست داعش بمين حالي وان نيباشا وحتى وانو هديت أسشوما كوجو أسكتما مدرسة كوجو ده متشتق نديت غير تصويرة شهيدة مثل كاكا براي خوال مالدا ندي أس نزانم هستيد وان تشبي هاتن
Nejla is saying that the situation of the Yazidi community and also the religious minorities is very challenging at the moment after ISIS went out militarily. She's talking about the ideology, which is still there. And she's saying that we have to fight against that pictures of enemies. And this is something which is very hard for her because she has still family. And her fear is that they get between this fight against this geopolitical interests, for example, and she don't find any place for human rights or for religious freedom. And what she's also saying is that the Yazidi community don't have the power to raise their own voice. They need the help from the United Nations, for example, and from Germany. And this is her favor that she wants to say or share with you, that she still needs the support.
Düzen, I'm going to close with just asking you a question. There are other Iraqi communities that were targeted by Daesh that have not spoken out, have not gotten assistance. What would you say to them, the importance of bringing visibility to these crimes?
I think speaking out creates power, and fear is not an option. And of course, when you break rules, you have to be brave. I can give you an example for that. You saw Nadia Murad in the first beginning when she was...
Didn't have her name.
Yeah. I think we saw another Nadia Murad than we know her today. That was a very challenging time for both of us. For me, it was like, of course, we have this Oriental patriarchal thinking in our community as well. We have men who are old traditioned. And they were not very amused about my work. And they said to me, why are you doing that? Why are you talking to her? And why is she answering to you without a hidden camera? Why is she showing her face? And I'm so happy that both of us said to ourselves and to each other, no, we will speak about that and we will make this documentary. And that was, I think, a very important moment also for our women in our community. And this is something which we try to use, don't understand us wrong, but because genocide is dramatical and it's awful, but we try to find the chance in it. And this is something which we share with our Yazidi sisters from Iraq, for example, because we still have this kind of challenges. And I'm always saying there are three kinds of genocide. The red one, the bloody one, what ISIS done to us. Then we have this white one, when you have to went out, when you don't have rights, like my father, my grandmother in Turkey. This was another kind of under-appreciation. And the third one, of course, is how we behave to each other. For example, this strict marriage rule, who was needed at that time, because that was ISIS done to us, happened many, many times. But I think now we are living in diaspora. We need to, we need to be critical with ourselves and ask ourselves how to develop and how to use that. And I think we have a holiness who is very open for that. But the change made women like Nejla and Nadia.
Thank you. I'd like to thank all of the panelists for their courage, their commitment to this, and their bravery in speaking out. I'd like to give the floor for closing remarks to Mr. Mohammed Bar Al-Aloum, the permanent representative of Iraq to the United Nations. And then following this, we will have a reception.
Assalamu alaikum. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to take this opportunity to thank Ms. Pamela Patton, the Special Representative of the Secretary General on Sexual Violence in Conflict, and her office for organizing the screening of this documentary titled Hawar, My Journey to Genocide, and the panel of discussion of today. I would like to extend my gratitude as well to the Permanent Mission of Federal Republic of Germany, to the United Nations for sponsoring this event today, and to the dedicated panelists who have enriched the discussion today with their valuable contributions. Special thanks to Düzen Tekkal for her extraordinary work in documenting the plight of her people and community, and for the work done by Hawar organization in this regard. Today's documentary is another proof of the extent of the crimes committed by ISIL, also known as Daesh, against Yazidis in Iraq. A genocide campaign led by this terrorist group was seeking to destroy the Yazidis and to erase their identity through murder and sexual slavery, gang rape, torture, and humiliation. It's also an important reminder to look on the horrific experiences at the hands of Daesh fighters, to raise the plight of Yazidi victims, especially women and girls, and to speak out to the world the daily struggles for so many Iraqis for more than 3 years. Today, I would like to acknowledge the courage of Najla Mato for being here today to bravely share with us the suffering and intolerable pain she had witnessed when she was held captive for 12 months by ISIL. And thank her for coming out to the world to demand justice and freedom for her sisters and her community. Your voice, Najla, the daughter of Iraq, Bint al-Iraq, is bright and important in building supports against human trafficking and sexual violence, to encourage global efforts to prevent and end these crimes. Today's events highlights the ongoing need to address the suffering of Yazidi people, which have been forced to experience inhuman, unspeakable horrors under the brutality of the terrorist gangs of Daesh. And it reminds the international community to uphold its responsibility to help free the women and girls still held captive. The Iraqi government is saving no effort in this vein. It has recently agreed to have the UN Security Council appoint independent investigators to collect evidence of ISIL crimes, to bringing the perpetrators to justice and holding ISIL accountable for its mass executions by setting up a joint international mechanism to collect and document evidence. Also, the Iraqi government signed joint communique with the United Nations aimed at strengthening Iraqi legal frameworks with the goal of improving the means of addressed sexual violence for the many who have suffered from ISIL, especially Yazidi girls and women, and to solidify legal avenues for financial, psychological, and emotional assistance and compensations for the victims. We call you all through this venue to stand for accountability and justice. Yesterday, the Prime Minister of Republic of Iraq, Dr. Haider al-Abadi, received the leader of the Yazidi Supreme Religious Council in Iraq, Baba Sheikh Khurto, and assured him that the Iraqi government is working with all communities to support and sustain an inclusive reconciliation process and to ensure that Daesh is held accountable for its crimes in Iraq. The Prime Minister stressed in the meeting that the government will work to bring the Yazidis back to their areas as quickly and safely as possible. Ladies and gentlemen, after the liberation of Mosul and other cities from terrorist groups of Daesh and declaring victory, we look to the international community to help rebuild the devastated cities of Mosul, Ramadi, and parts of Salah ad-Din and Diyala provinces, ease the humanitarian crisis facing their residents, and to provide recovery programs for children, women, disabled, and IDPs. Again, my thanks to all of you involved for their participation, and my special thanks to Dr. Nagam, which I would like to speak in Arabic with her. Dr. Nagam, جهودك العظيمة كانت مشكورة جدا في هذا السبيل وفي هذا المسار الذي أنقذت فيه أبناء جاليتك وأبناء مجتمعك. أنت جزء من هذا المجتمع العراقي الذي هب بكافة طوائفه وفصائله ومكوناته لنجدة هذه المدن التي تضررت من جراء أعمال داعش الإرهابية. هذا الشعب الوفي لوطنه وبمساعدة المجتمع الدولي من دول التحالف ومن الدول الصديقة والشقيقة الذي هبت لنصرة العراق ولنصرة أبناء العراق وقوفاً ضد جرائم الإرهاب والتطرف. وهذه الهزيمة التي تلقاها داعش هي نصر ليس للعراق فقط وإنما لكل العالم. العراق كان ساحة لحرب الإرهاب، ونجح العراقيون بجهدهم وبدعم المجتمع الدولي أن يكون هناك مصداً لهذا الإرهاب المتطرف الذي هو خطراً ومرضاً يستشري في المجتمعات. ندعو كل المجتمع الدولي لأن يدعم العراق. المرحلة لم تنتهي إطلاقاً، النصر العسكري قد تحقق، لكن المرحلة الثانية وهي الأهم وهو الواجب الكبير الذي يتحتم على المجتمع الدولي أن يقف بجانب العراق لنصرة المجتمع ولنصرة العالم نفسه، لأن بقاء هذا الحال على هذه الحال هو استمرار لهذا التطرف وهذا الإرهاب. كما تعرضت الدكتورة نغم لكثير من المشاكل، الآن المرحلة الحقيقية للعمل لإعادة هؤلاء النازحين والمتضررين من جراء أعمال داعش الإرهابية وإعادة الثقة إلى أنفسهم وإعادة تكاملهم مع المجتمع مرة ثانية، وإلا سيبقى الإرهاب متجذرا في أنفسهم. هذه هي الخطورة يجب أن يرعاها المجتمع الدولي. إذا لم نستطع أن نساعد هؤلاء المتضررين من جراء حملة داعش الإرهابية، فسيبقى التطرق موجودا في مجتمعنا وفي كل مجتمعات العالم. وإذا أراد العالم أن ينتصر للحرية والكرامة، عليهم أن يكونوا جادين ومتعاونين في دحر هذا الإرهاب ونزع جذوره من الأساس، ثقافيا وماليا وكل شيء. هناك جهات تدعم هذا الإرهاب في كل جوانب الدعم. علينا أن نقف متضامنين في هذا المجال. فيما يتعلق بالمساءلة والعدالة، تعقيبا للدكتور العزيز، القرار مجلس الأمن الدولي كان واضحا، وهذه خطوة جبارة ومهمة. كان المجتمع الدولي ومجلس الأمن والمملكة المتحدة ساعدوا العراق في هذا المجال، والحوار جاري مع المنظمة الدولية مع الأمم المتحدة في وضع التفاصيل الخاصة في إنشاء الفريق التحقيقي الخاص بهذا الموضوع. وهذا سوف يكون عامل مهم لجمع الأدلة والبراهين التي ستقدم هؤلاء للمحاكمة والوقوف بالعدالة أمام العدالة. أشكر زميلي السفير ألمانيا العزيز وعلى جهود حكومته العزيزة في دعم هؤلاء المتضررين. أشكر سعادة السيدة باتن في هذا الجهد. أشكر الأعضاء المشاركين في هذا البانل. أشكر الدكتورة نغم في تحملها المجيء وعرض هذه الرسالة. وأقول لنجلاء: نجلاء، كوني قوية وكوني صوت لأبناء مجتمعك وأبناء ديانتك. العراق في حاجة لكم، والعراق يستوعبكم، والعراق يحوي كل المكونات، وهذا هو العراق. العراق للعرب، العراق للكرد، العراق للأزيديين، العراق للتركمان، العراق للشبك، العراق للمندائيين، العراق للمسلمين، العراق لكل مكونات العراق. هذا هو العراق. خلق العراق ويبقى هكذا العراق. وشكرا لكم.